Hi friends, are you watching? Can you hear me today? Anyone can comment so that I will understand that I can be watched or I can be seen on Facebook Live. Yes. Shall I start? Hi friends, myself Advocate Shahid Ali Ansari, a practicing lawyer at High Court, Bombay. Today I would like to address you on the topic of most important topic of law, that is constitutional subject, doctrine of separation of powers as given under the Constitution of India. We know that the Constitution of India is considered to be a biggest law of the country, and in the wording of so many scholars of law, it is mother of all the laws, which gives the birth to a number of laws. Therefore, each words of the Constitution of India is pregnant, because for only single word a law can be made, law can be enacted. Therefore, Constitution of India is supposed to be a biggest law of the country and mother of all laws. We know that the before commencement of the Constitution of India, there was monarchy. A king or queen used to control and used to administer the nation or the state respective, which was within her or his control. The king or queen was the legislator, or similarly king or queen was the judge, because they used to punish the people, they used to adjudicate the cases, etc. They used to punish the people for offenses, etc. And they used to decide the civil issues. It means they used to do all the things. Similarly, kings and queen used to give directions to their subordinates to execute their orders, etc. Therefore, the king was doing the all works. What kind of work is being done by executive, legislature and judiciary? All the work was being done by only one person, that is queen or king. Therefore, it is called monarchy. Monarchy is always detrimental to the democracy. Perhaps we have to say that where monarchy exists, there does not exist democracy. So that there should be a democracy or democratic state, there has to be constitution. It should be in the written form preferably, or it can be orally. However, there has to be constitution of the particular country, so as to govern the rights of the citizens, powers of the state, etc., so that the rule of law can be maintained, so that the fundamental rights of the people can be maintained and protected. Otherwise, for example, I would like to give one best example to you. Suppose police has arrested one person. Police can register FIR and can submit the charge sheet. If police is given power of judge, then he will definitely punish. Therefore, the nature of work, function of work should be different, and the functions or powers, different powers should be allocated to different wings. Therefore, in the Constitution of India, we have three wings of the government. One is legislature, which enacts the laws, that is parliament, which enacts the laws, which makes the laws, which amends the Constitution of India. Likewise, at state level, state legislature is also provided under the Constitution of India. Therefore, the legislature or parliament is consisting of parliament and the state legislature, who are supposed to make the laws, enact the laws, or make the amendment, etc. Therefore, law-making powers have been given to the legislature, whereas the judiciary is assigned the function of interpreting the laws, making judicial review of the legislative action, that they can check the validity or constitutionality of the law and judiciary can declare, Honorable High Court and Honorable Supreme Court of India can declare and can check any particular law whether it is constitutional or unconstitutional, whether it violates the fundamental right of citizen or not, whether a particular law goes against the object clause of that law or not, whether that law goes against third part of the Constitution of India or not. Likewise, therefore, it is called judicial review. Similarly, judiciary can assess or examine the action of the executives, and the order passed by the executive quasi-judicial authority can be checked or judicially reviewed by the Honorable Supreme Court and High Court under writ jurisdiction. Therefore, the task of the judiciary is to interpret the laws, to make judicial review, and to punish, whereas the work of the executive is to implement the laws, to enforce the laws, enforce the order of the court, enforce the order of the ministers, etc., etc. And the judiciary in India is consisting of Honorable Supreme Court of India, Honorable all High Courts in India, and Honorable all the trial courts in India. These three are consisting of the judiciary, whereas the advocates are at the bar. So from this we have understood that there are three wings of the government: judiciary, executive, and the parliament. And media is considered to be a fourth wing of the government, though it is not written anywhere, but we generally speaks that the media is fourth wing or fourth pillar of the government. Therefore, it is also bounded duty of the media to reflect the true news, correct news, etc. Now we are talking about the wings of the government, that only specifically regarding these three wings of the government, organs of the government, or pillars of the government. Now I would like to state here what is the reason or object behind making this theory of separation of powers. Because if it is stated by some scholar that if powers are given, then power makes corrupt that man, or if absolute powers are given, then that person will be absolutely corrupt. Whimsically the powers can be used or the powers can be abused. And if the all powers of judiciary, executive, and the parliaments are given or assigned to a particular wing only, for example, a judiciary is given all the powers, then they can do anything. Likewise, if all the powers of the three wings, function of the three wings, are given to the legislature, then they can do anything. There won't be existing democracy. Therefore, there has to be some limitation to their function, to their powers, and it is also important to check whether the powers assigned to them are not being misused or abused. Therefore, the three wings organs have been created, and this is the concept of Aristotle in the ancient time. Later on, Montesquieu has also propounded the theory of separation of powers. Now, the separation of power, this doctrine is also considered to be a basic structure of the Constitution of India. I am also going to discuss the concept of basic structure in this lecture, because that cannot be taken away by the parliament by even doing the amendment through by way of doing amendment to the Constitution of India under Article 368. So the basic structure that cannot be taken away by even parliament, even by making amendment to the Constitution of India. Therefore, the theory of the separation of power is considered to be a basic structure which cannot be taken away from the Constitution of India. Now, you must have understood the importance of the basic separation of powers. And the reason behind is that no one should be allowed to enjoy all the rights available, because all the rights cannot be enjoyed by one. All the powers cannot be vested with only one authority. Otherwise, he can act whimsically. That wing can act whimsically, and there won't be a protection of the rights of the people. There won't be rights. There won't be enforcement. Likewise, suppose the powers are given to ministers, adjudicating power, judicial review, etc., then they can do anything, means they will be working like a king. And that is called monarchy, which was there in the ancient time. And to remove the monarchy so as to establish the rule of law and to protect the fundamental right of the people, the concept of separation of power is brought. And now, therefore, no wing is allowed to intervene or transgress their particular limit. They cannot do the work of the other wings. Judiciary cannot perform the work of the legislature. Legislature cannot perform the work of the executive, etc. No one is allowed to interfere in their works of each other. And at the same time, they are not allowed to misuse or abuse their own powers. If they are saying that I am working within my framework, however, he is not allowed to misuse or abuse of the powers. So that has to be checked by the other wings. Therefore, this system of checks and balances is created. Checks and balances. One wing will check the work of the other, and the work of the second wing will be checked by the third wing, etc. Therefore, they are boss of their. No one is subordinate to anyone. No one is boss of anyone. Simply, I'll say this is my conclusion, that no one is boss of anyone and no one is servant of anyone. And no one is king in this three, because all three wings or organs have been created under the Constitution of India. Therefore, neither judiciary is sovereign, neither judiciary is supreme, nor the parliament is supreme, nor the executive is supreme, but the Constitution of India is supreme, because that has given the birth to all these three organs of the government. Therefore, none of the wing is allowed to interfere in the work or function of the others. At the same time, no wing is allowed to abuse their own powers. Therefore, the system of checks and balances is created so that the work done by one wing can be checked by other, and work done by the second wing can be checked by the third. This is called checks and balances. Now, I would like to cite some of the articles of the Constitution of India, by which you will come to know how the government, three wings of the government enjoy different functions, and they are separate in their nature. Number 1, Article 50 of the Constitution of India says that it is duty bounded put on the state to make the judiciary separate from the executive. Means, under the Constitution of India, duty is casted on the state to make the judiciary separate than that of executive. Otherwise, there cannot be judiciary, and the work of both the wings cannot be performed by all. Therefore, state is bound to make separation between these two, executive and the judiciary. Another Article 121, and according to Article 211 of the Constitution of India, the legislature or parliament cannot discuss the conduct of the judges of the Honorable High Court and conduct of Honorable Supreme Court. The conduct of the judges, official conduct of the judges while discharging their duties as a judge, cannot be discussed by the parliament in their proceedings. Or hope that you are listening to me. Sorry. Once again, I'll repeat it. Under Article 121 and 211 of the Constitution of India, the Parliament and Legislature cannot discuss the conduct of the judges of the Supreme Court and conduct of the judges of Honorable High Court. This privilege is granted under the Constitution of India to the judges. Similarly, under Article 122 and 212 of the Constitution of India, the judiciary, that is High Court and Supreme Court, cannot inquire into the validity of the proceedings of the Parliament and the State Legislature. The proceedings which goes in the Parliament and the State Legislature, it cannot be inquired, and judges cannot go into the making inquiry whether the proceeding, whether there was any irregularity in the proceedings of the Parliament and the State Legislature, etc. So these are privileges given to the legislature and the parliament. Now, according to Article 361 of the Constitution of India, the Honorable President of India and the Honorable Governors of the respective states have been given privileges, and because they cannot be sued during the time when they are holding the office. No one can make them a party. No one, if somebody files a writ petition or anything like public interest litigations, then that person cannot make the President of India and Governor as a respondent or party to that petitions, because they have got the immunity, they have got the privileges under the Article 361 of the Constitution of India. Now, one of the important judgments of the Honorable Supreme Court of India delivered in 1973 in Keshwanand Bharati's case. That case is very famous case. You can write it down. Being a lawyer, you all must be aware of this. Under this case laws, the Honorable Supreme Court of India in 1973 has said that the parliamentary power to do amendment of the Constitution of India are subject to basic structure. It means even if the parliament is allowed to do the amendment of the Constitution of India by invoking powers under Article 361 of the Constitution of India, however, these powers are not absolute, because these powers are subject to some limitations. That subject is basic structure. The parliament is also allowed to amend the fundamental rights, not only constitutional right, but the parliament can amend the fundamental rights, right from Article 12 to 35. However, this cannot exceed, the power of amending constitution cannot exceed to remove the basic structure of the Constitution of India. Therefore, the theory of basic structure is propounded under this judgment of Keshwanand Bharati's case by the Honorable Supreme Court of India. So finally, what is the stage? That anything can be amended, added, removed from the under the name of amendment to the Constitution of India by the Parliament. However, the basic structure cannot be taken away. Now, the Honorable Supreme Court of India has not defined the word in the limited words what could be basic structure and what does it mean. However, the Honorable Supreme Court has explained the meaning that what could be a basic structure of the Constitution of India. Basic structure is nothing but the soul of the Constitution of India, Atma of the Constitution of India, the backbone of the Constitution of India, the pillar of the Constitution of India, which cannot be taken away from the Constitution of India under the name of amendment to the Constitution of India. Therefore, parliaments are controlled by the judiciary. Judiciary says that this basic structure from the Constitution of India cannot be taken away. Otherwise, what will happen if such a amendment is done which could damage the basic structure? Then what will happen? Because there will remain nothing in that Constitution of India. If you remove the soul of the Constitution of India, pillar of the Constitution of India, backbone of the Constitution of India, then it will not be even Constitution of India and it will loses its features. So these are the core features of the Constitution of India, pillars of the Constitution of India, soul of the Constitution of India, which can never be taken away from it. Though some words can be added, though some words can be deleted, though some fundamental rights can be amended by the Constitution, by the Parliament, by way of amendment, however, the basic structure cannot be taken away. Now, what could be a basic structure has been very well explained by the Honorable Supreme Court. Like, by way of number of examples, the Honorable Supreme Court has said that the separation of power, now the subject which we are talking about, separation of power is considered to be a basic structure. Equality before law is a basic structure. Independence of judiciary is a basic structure. Right to practice any religion is also basic structure. And right to life is also basic structure, however, with some limitations in the emergency, etc. And secularism is also a basic structure which cannot be taken from the Constitution of India. Therefore, The Keshwananda Bharati's case was a landmark judgment delivered in 1973. Thereafter, in 1975, there was another judgment called Indira Nehru Gandhi versus Raj Narayan, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court in this case said that, means Indira Gandhi versus Union of India, Indira Gandhi versus Raj Narayan case in 1975, the Honorable Supreme Court said that the Parliament cannot enjoy the adjudicating rights. Adjudicating dispute is obviously work and function of the judiciary only. Only judiciary is empowered to adjudicate the dispute, etc. Therefore, the Parliament is not allowed to do the work of adjudication of the dispute, because which is purely judicial work. Even by doing amendment to the Constitution of India, the Parliament is not allowed to do the work of adjudicating dispute, because that is the task and zone of the judiciary. So in this Indira Nehru Gandhi versus Raj Narayan 1975, it is said that even by doing amendment to the Constitution of India, Parliament cannot enjoy the right of adjudicating dispute. Thereafter, in 1981, the Honorable Supreme Court of India has also passed one judgment, which is also a very famous judgment, S.K. Gupta versus President of India. In that case, the Honorable Supreme Court said that independence of judiciary is also basic structure. Nowadays, we generally talk that judiciary should be independent, etc. That is already there. So, otherwise, if the judiciary is not independent, if it is controlled by the other wings of the government, like legislature or the executive, then judiciary cannot perform its function smoothly, fairly, impartially. Therefore, judiciary must be independent and free. It should not be influenced by the other wings, so that the rule of law can be maintained, so that the fundamental rights of the people can be maintained, so that the legal rights of the people can be maintained and enshrined. And so as to maintain the true democracy, literally, there has to be independence of the judiciary. Therefore, in the case of S.K. Gupta versus President of India, Honorable Supreme Court has said that the independence of judiciary is a basic structure. This cannot be taken away. However, perhaps you might have gone, being a lawyer, Article 124, sub-article 2, which says that the judges of the Honorable Supreme Court and the judges of the Honorable High Court can be removed by the Parliament or the legislature. Parliament, obviously. What is the procedure for that? The motion has to be passed in both the House of Parliament, and it can begin from any of the House of the Parliament. However, it should be passed with 2/3 of the majority. Then and then only it can be passed. 2/3 majority means 66.67. 2/3 means out of 300, 200 votes should be there. Then and then the judges of the Honorable High Court and Supreme Court can be removed. However, there is no word impeachment is used in respect of the judges. Only the word removal is used. Now, the grounds available to remove the judges of the Honorable High Court and Supreme Court is, there are only two grounds. One is proved incapacity, and second is misbehavior. The judges of Honorable Supreme Court and High Court can be removed on only these two grounds only, and none other than that. And the motion has to be passed in both the House of Parliament, though it can be moved before any House of the Parliament. It should be passed with 2/3 of the majority, and it should be finally assented by the Honorable President of India. Then and then only the judges can be removed. So now you have seen so many examples that the judges can be removed by the Parliament. Judges can be appointed by the Collegium, and Honorable President of India can swear them. Likewise, the three wings of the government are being controlled by one another, etc. No one is their boss, no one is their subordinate. All are enjoying the different function under the Constitution of India. Therefore, generally we say or discuss that always tussle is going between the parliament and the judiciary, who is superior. However, now we say after conclusion that no one is superior, none of the organs is superior, only Constitution of India is superior. And above than that, the will of the people which makes the law is sovereign. And there were some instances in the past also when the judiciary or other wings have tried to cross their level, transgress their level, etc. And they were encroached. They had tried to encroach upon the rights of the other. For example, now you know that making of the law, enacting law is task of the legislature, parliament, etc. Now, in one example, Vishaka's case, perhaps you might be knowing Vishaka's case. In that case, the Honorable Supreme Court of India has laid down the guidelines as to sexual harassment and what could be sexual harassment, that was defined, though it was not there in the statute or IPC, etc. Therefore, making such a guidelines, framing such a guidelines would be up to some extent encroaching upon the rights of the legislature, because that is the task of the legislature. Let the legislature define a particular offense or give the meaning of particular offense, etc. But it is not the, obviously it is not the task of the judiciary. Second example, in 2010, the Honorable Supreme Court of India has directed one of the executive minister to distribute the food grains amongst the people at large, to the people, society. Distribution of the food is obviously a policy decision of the government, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court or High Court cannot intervene. It is task. It is their own zone. Therefore, they are executives at liberty or power to take a decision, proper decision, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court or High Court cannot direct them. This has also happened in 2010. This is also one of the example. And in one case, the Honorable Supreme Court has ordered the government to remove the high-level committee appointed by them to check who have invested the money in the Swiss bank, etc. And instead of that, the Honorable Supreme Court has directed to form a committee of special investigation team, SIT. So this was nothing but one of the example of encroaching upon the rights of the legislature by the judiciary. Similarly, even legislature in the past also, legislature have tried to encroach upon the rights of the judiciary, like in the old cases of Shankari Prasad, Sajjan Singh, Golaknath, etc., which I am not going to discuss here because of the limitation of time. Hope that I have covered many things regarding the separation of powers or doctrine of separation of powers in this video before you. And I would like to give one more example to you. Even if the law is made by a legislature, by all the member of parliament or by a state legislature, for example, then that law can be declared as a null and void or unconstitutional or ultra vires only by two judges of the Honorable High Court or of Supreme Court. Then this much strong powers are vested with the judiciary. Therefore, the judiciary controls the legislature, whereas removal of the judges can be done by the legislature or parliament. Similarly, I would like to give another example to you that the Honorable Supreme Court or High Court cannot direct, command, like they cannot give a they cannot issue a writ of mandamus directing the legislature to or parliament to make the laws regarding particular issue. Only suggestion can be given by the judiciary to the parliament or legislature to enact the laws on particular subject. If command is given, order is given, then even if such an order is not followed or obeyed, there can't be a contempt of court. Because why? It is task of the legislature to enact the laws. They are only the authority to decide on which subject there should be a law, etc. Therefore, the judiciary cannot direct or mandate them that you have to make a law in particular days, 5 months, 6 months regarding this. If done, if such a thing is done by the judiciary, then this could be taken as only suggestion, not as a binding, because there can't be contempt of court. Hope that in today's lecture I have covered many things, and my audience and my friends are motivating me to give many lectures within the short span of my career of law. I am happy to deliver such a lectures before you. Hope that you are enjoying. Thanks, friend. See you later.